Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it is episode 79, where we are talking Ari Aster's new film, Eddington. A nice light topic today, not at all like a politically divisive or very, I don't know. This movie is extremely polarizing. I'm excited to talk about it because, honestly, it was kind of a crazy screening that I went to, and I'm going to tell you guys all about it in the non-spoiler section, but just what a friggin' time I had with this. But I hope you are all doing well. What a week it has been. We have tons of news to go through. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about in the What Else I Watched segment. I did not get to watch Beau is Afraid this week. I was just a little too busy. I wanted to watch it so bad before I went into this film. So at the moment, the only Ari Aster film that I have seen is Midsummer, and I love that movie. But here we are. I'm very excited for today's episode. Before we hop into the news, of course, just want to say there will be a new YouTube video in a couple weeks from now on Wednesday, July 30th, I want to say. You can also go enjoy my current video now that Superman is out, all this good stuff about DC going forward, and I put a lot of my wish list stuff into that video, so a lot of fun. A great thing to watch after Superman. As for today, timestamps below. As always, if you don't want anything spoiled for you with Eddington, stick to the non-spoiler section. We also have timestamps for the news, non-spoiler, spoilers, and what else I watched, but it's going to be a good one today. I think it's going to be a healthy, lengthy conversation about this movie that I really had to sit with my feelings before I even wrote any notes about this film. So I'm excited. But before we talk Eddington, how about we jump into the news? Let's do it. Alrighty, our first piece of news this week, the Emmy nominations for 2025 have dropped. Severance led the charge with 27 nominations total, Jesus Christ. The Penguin in second with 24, which I believe is a record for a superhero show. Maybe it's tying Watchmen. I wonder what the superhero show was that the Penguin is actually tying. But anyways, tons of stuff to talk about here. The biggest takeaway I have is Andor, the actors all being snubbed for Andor, except Saw Gerrera's actor. He was the only one that got a nomination. So I'm very surprised because, like, in the leading actor, we have Pedro Pascal for The Last of Us, but in my opinion, he's not a lead. He is clearly a supporting. Like in his category, lead actor in a drama series, we have Sterling K. Brown for Paradise, which is a Hulu show, Gary Oldman, Slow Horses, Pedro Pascal, The Last of Us, Adam Scott, Severance, and Noah Wyle, The Pit. Everybody knew those two were going to be in there, deservedly so. I haven't seen Paradise. Maybe I will watch it at some point because it has good reviews and obviously it's getting nominations. Slow Horses. Whoever is running the Slow Horses show should have been running Netflix at just overall, because they've had I think they've put out 5 seasons. They have 6 fully filmed, and then they already have 7 written and ready to film. So 7 seasons in like 2 years. Holy moly, those guys are cooking. But I think there were a lot of categories where I was really surprised that The White Lotus picked up so many. Like supporting actress, I believe there's 3 White Lotus actresses. I think Carrie Coon was probably the only, actually Amy Lou Wood as well. So I think theoretically 2 actors should have been nominated on The White Lotus, and everyone else has kind of like, I don't know, who else could it be? Walton Goggins? I don't know. He was mostly okay, but I think it was an enjoyable season of The White Lotus, but I don't think it's worth 23 Emmy nominations. Like, that's just insane. And I think you do have to question at one point the voters. I mean, it does feel like voters of all these award shows, whether it's the Oscars, whether it's the Emmys, like, it feels like they don't like nominating things, or they don't like watching tons of different stuff. They like just the name recognition of like the main stuff, like, okay, that's HBO, perfect, get all the actors in there. Or like what was talked about online, well, I guess The White Lotus was popular, so we'll nominate that. Or like Pedro Pascal is popular, even though he was in 2 episodes this season and he's clearly not a lead actor. He is the supporting actor in that show. I don't know. It's very confusing. I feel probably worst of all the snubs, I think Diego Luna, I just feel really bad for him because I feel like he gave his career best in season 2 of Andor specifically. There were some moments like the Gorman massacre when he's driving away from that and you could just see the despair in his face, and it's like that is a clip that would be shown in an award show before they announce the winner. Like, honestly, honestly, I think he would give Adam Scott and Noah Wyle a run for his money if people weren't afraid to vote for a Disney Plus actor. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain that. It's a very weird thing because Noah Wyle, absolutely, The Pit deserved so many awards. I mean, so many acting performances in that show were great. Adam Scott, I said in my review that I think he's even better in season 2. I believe I said that. I can't really remember that hard, but I think he was fantastic in season 2 is the bottom line for me, and I totally saw him getting that Emmy nomination. I thought, oh, it's going to be a really tight race between him and Noah Wyle. And then Andor season 2 happened, and I was like, oh shit, is Diego Luna going to throw a huge wrench in the mix? What's the saying? Span in the mix? Span in the wrench? Wrench in the span? I don't know, dude. Sure, whatever that saying is. Cassian Andor was just like one of the best characters this year with the most rounded storyline that everyone was kind of blown away by. And I thought for sure Diego Luna, this might be his chance. And I was very disappointed. Same with Adria Arjona, Stellan Skarsgård, Elizabeth Dulao. Andor might be my favorite TV show of the year. I think, look, Severance season 2 was good, but there were a couple episodes where I felt it starting to drag, or I was like, do they not know where they want to take this? The Pit was good, and it was very intense, but it was like, okay, it's a medical show. We've had these before, whereas Andor, I was like, oh, this is just saying so much right now. Like, this is really vocal, and it's really upfront and in our faces, and it's a Star Wars show, and just Tony Gilroy using that vessel for this greater political message and for these characters and really leading into it. I don't know. Is Andor season 2 my favorite show of the year? It might be. Honestly, it feels terrible comparing Andor, The Pit, and Severance because it's 3 seasons of television that I'm like, this is a once in a lifetime quality thing that it could be generational and they all have to compete against each other. Like, that feels so unfair. But anyway, speaking of The Last of Us, season 3 might be one long season and it might actually wrap up the show. It's said to be coming in 2027, according to the HBO head bosses or whatever. And I don't know, guys, I'm kind of worried about season 3 of The Last of Us. I think it might even take a huge detour from the game because Neil Druckmann, right? He's the game guy. Because he stepped back, I feel like Craig Mazin might be okay with pushing off and doing his own thing. It's funny because just before I was recording, I was just scrolling TikTok when I was setting all my stuff up. And there was one journalist who said that Craig Mazin does not like writer's rooms. When he wrote Chernobyl, like he just sort of wrote it by himself, or one of the episodes that obviously he won an Emmy for, he wrote by himself, and he's not really like a team, not that he's not a team player, he's good at collaboration, but he's not someone that likes to do focus group writing. He likes to go back into his little dark room, write his own stuff, have the plan be what he wants. So in that collaboration process, when he was working with Neil Druckmann, a little bit different for him because, you know, video games can be a much more collaborative team process where you're all writing together and doing these different things, I guess. So obviously we knew we're probably not going to get this for a long time. If it was even going to be renewed, it got renewed right after the season finale. Obviously season 3 is going to be a big perspective change. I won't say, just in case people don't know, but season 3 is going to be very different. I could see why they want maybe season 3 to be one long season because season 2 did it feel a little bit short? I don't know. I just think it was spinning its wheels a lot of the time, so that made it feel longer perhaps. But to me, I could see season 3. I could see the vision of making this one season where we have that perspective change for the first half maybe, then it switches back, we wrap up the show, we don't need a season 4, we don't need to prolong this Last of Us thing any longer, and we can just let this be as a show and Craig Mazin can move on to other stuff. That's just how I'm feeling about it, and I honestly wouldn't mind that. I think I would rather that, like spend a longer time on one season, make it a 13 or 14 episode season. That would be really cool. I miss the days of those seasons. I mean, speaking of Andor, wasn't season 1 10 episodes, 11 episodes, something like that? And then season 2 was 12 episodes? Am I right? I could open Disney Plus on my phone, but honestly, I just don't really feel like doing that. But all right, next story. Marvel, once again in the news. John Malkovich has been cut completely from Fantastic Four First Steps. Now, there was a long time where every trailer, all the footage they were showing, I was like, oh, John Malkovich, like they only show him once in all of this. Well, apparently, he was also supposed to be in Spider-Man 4. Wasn't he going to be who is he going to be in Spider-Man 4? The Vulture? Was that a thing? Something like that. But what's interesting is he was going to play the cosmonaut supervillain Red Ghost, but he's actually been cut completely from the movie. And one of the big, I don't know, it's John Malkovich. Like, that's a huge actor that you're cutting from this movie. I do find it fascinating how this movie is actually only an hour 55 minutes. It's a very tight runtime. I've seen murmurings online on Twitter yesterday that some people have seen the final cut of the movie. It's very good. It's very solid. Like, it's very fine-tuned. And Marvel, this is, I think, one of their most like test screened films. So they've really been tweaking it, really fine-tuning it because they want to get it right to the fans, which is really fascinating that they are so willing to hear fans out and they don't want it to just be their own little thing, that they're willing to, I don't know, pretty much just test the hell out of it, as opposed to other movies that maybe they tested less. But at the same time, the fact that it's only an hour 55 minutes, that's a brisk runtime for Fantastic Four. I thought this movie would have been like 2 hours 10 minutes, 2 hours 15 minutes, around there, especially leading into the Avengers movies like next year. This week they said Reed Richards is the leader of the Avengers. So I was like, oh shit, that's like a huge thing to admit, that he's going to be the leader of the Avengers in Doomsday and Secret Wars. That is a big deal. So I thought we would be sitting in this movie a little bit longer, but you know, I have a feeling it's probably just going to be their Earth gets absolutely wrecked by Galactus and they escape to another universe and they end up on Earth. I think that might be it, to be honest, but I don't know. I'm excited. That's next week's episode. I'm very excited for that. I think it looks good. All the trailers have made me excited. And to be honest, just like with Superman, every trailer has made me more excited than the last trailer. Like, I feel like my excitement has only gotten higher. At first, I didn't see the Pedro Pascal casting. Like, I was like, I don't know. But then I've seen a couple of clips or the promo materials, him talking in the trailers. I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. He's like this super genius, kind of hyper OCD, anxious. He's been thinking about the world ending and all this stuff, and he's going to be probably a smart ass like, you know, Reed Richards is in most books. He's a bit of an asshole because he is the smartest guy in the Marvel universe. So I'm excited. I think it can work. And you know what? The fact that they're willing to cut a giant star like John Malkovich shows they were willing to sacrifice characters for the sake of the story, and they weren't just like, oh well, we want John Malkovich fans to be pleased. I don't know, are people giant John Malkovich fans that they would be mad enough at Fantastic Four? But at the same time, like, I think it is good intentions that the studio's like, you know what, we got to cut him because we need this to be a more focused story. I'm hoping that's what it led to, that they didn't want to have some giant character fest that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You know, Superman had a ton of characters. We'll talk about it a little bit and what else I watched today. But for me, it really worked having all those characters because it's showing us a world that already has superheroes. Whereas Fantastic Four and Marvel, I think there are some movies where it's like, okay, but why are people here? Like, what are we doing with all of these villains, all of these heroes? But who knows? Maybe he comes back if they ever do a sequel to Fantastic Four. That could be really cool. Right now, they're in the middle of their press junket, and Pedro Pascal is getting asked some of the worst questions, like daddy-related questions. Oh my God, Twitter this morning. I'm recording this Friday, July 18th, and Twitter this morning was just freaking out over someone asking Pedro Pascal, what's it like being the daddy of the MCU? Guys, can we stop? First of all, who are these people that are interviewing the stars of these films? Like, why are we just letting anyone on TikTok? You know, one day maybe I would love to interview people that are involved in films. That would be so much fun. But at the same time, if my questions weren't good enough, I would happily let them shut me down and be like, no, sorry, like, we've already had these questions asked or whatever. Like, it just feels like every interviewer is going for a viral moment in their interviews. Like, they're like, okay, I have 5 minutes to get a clip online that'll get me some traction, where they don't actually want to ask about the movie or ask about, I don't know, just anything interesting in general. It's so strange. But either way, Fantastic Four, John Malkovich is cut. We saw a first picture of Paul Walterhausen. Is that how you say his name? Is that his name? He has 3 names, a very American 3 names. Paul Walterhausen from I, Tonya. It looks cool. I'm very excited. A couple of more stories before we hop into Eddington. Lilo and Stitch this week officially crossed the $1 billion mark at the global box office. It's the first Hollywood film this year that's crossed $1 billion. Honestly, it might be the final one until Avatar later in the year. I could see that maybe I could see that crossing $1 billion. Both of the first two did, right? So, I mean, Minecraft came close. Minecraft was Frozen 900 million something, but Lilo and Stitch is the first to cross $1 billion. If you look at the list of like post-COVID movies that have crossed $1 billion, it's a little bit depressing because of course, it's all like, Super Mario Brothers or this, and I don't know, there's a couple that I'm like, hell yeah, where it's Avatar 2 or Top Gun Maverick that I'm like, let's go, that's cool. But this is the first one this year. I will stand by my prediction last weekend that neither Superman nor Fantastic Four will cross $1 billion. No way. Jurassic World Rebirth, absolutely not. All three of the movies are eating away at each other's profits, really. I think Superman is probably going to hit 600 million. That's my guess. I think between 500, 600, but it does have very good legs right now. Like, it had the highest Wednesday for a while. I think it had the biggest Monday or biggest Tuesday of the year. I don't know. I just think the fact that Fantastic Four is coming out next week in IMAX, it's going to kill the premium format for Superman. So that's going to take away a huge chunk, but it's going to have another good weekend. Jurassic World Rebirth is still doing pretty solid. Like, I think it's 350 million, 400 million, something like that. Fantastic Four, I think, will probably... I don't know. I'm kind of worried about Fantastic Four because it's MCU. I'm scared that people are going to be a little daunted by that of like, oh, well, I haven't watched the last 36 MCU things, or I didn't watch Ironheart. Whereas Superman, they were very vocal that like, this is a new thing. This is the start of a universe, and maybe they had that in their favor. It's interesting. I'm excited to see at the end of the month or at the end of the summer, really. We should give the whole summer because I think all three movies could stay in theaters for a little while. Superman's apparently going to hit video on demand or at home digital, I think August 26th. Jurassic World Rebirth, I could see them keeping in theaters until maybe mid-August, like August 10th, August 15th, and then Fantastic Four is probably going to get like a full month. Like, I could see it getting August 26th similarly, or middle of September. So we'll see where all of the sticks land. What's the saying? Today I'm having a tough time with my analogies. We'll see where all the parts fall, where all the puzzle pieces fall. I was going to talk about Taika Waititi allegedly doing a Judge Dredd movie, but honestly, that's just a little too depressing. So I think we should hop into our Eddington review. Again, timestamps below if you don't want anything spoiled. Non-spoilers, I keep it super broad. Just talk about the themes and the intentions and the genre of this film, what he's trying to do. We ask some questions, and we're going to try and prod this film a little bit more and work our way through it. But yes, let's talk Ari Aster's Eddington. Eddington is a 2025 Western comedy coming in at 2 hours, 25 minutes. Its Google, in a nutshell, is intense, gritty, and suspenseful. It is directed and written by Ari Aster, who did Hereditary, Midsommar, Beau is Afraid. So this is his fourth film, I believe, right? Yeah, fourth film. Had a budget of $25 million. Reviews so far are divided, or what? I don't know, mixed? I guess mixed is a better word. They're not divided. I would say mixed. 6.1 on IMDb, 67% on Rotten Tomatoes with no audience score yet. It's still only Friday, so it's a little early. 3.3 Letterboxd rating with a 4-star mode. So I don't know. There's good, there's bad, there's kind of mixed. It's a little bit all over the place, of course, and I think I've heard this term thrown around a lot, your mileage will vary with this film. I think that's extremely true. A synopsis for Eddington. In May of 2020, a standoff between a small-town sheriff and mayor sparks a powder keg as neighbor is pitted against neighbor in Eddington, New Mexico. The film has a giant cast. It stars Joaquin Phoenix as Joe Cross, Pedro Pascal as Mayor Ted Garcia, Luke Grimes as Guy, Deidre O'Connell from The Penguin, of course, as Dawn, Michael Ward as Michael, Emma Stone as Louise Cross, Austin Butler as Vernon Jefferson Peak, Matt Gomez Hidaka as Eric Garcia, William Bello as Officer Butterfly Jimenez, Clifton Collins Jr. as Lodge, Cameron Mann as Brian, Amelie Hofferel as Sarah, Landau Goolsby as Will, Elise Falanga as Nicolette, a bunch of others. It's a giant cast. It's a lot of random people showing up in and out, but let's talk Eddington. My initial thoughts on Eddington, I don't know. I had heard the initial reviews from Cannes about this film, and I was like, oh boy, this might be the hardest film of the summer to review. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh, there's actually going to be a lot to talk about here, so I'm not that worried about making time. But Ari Aster has definitely made a movie about small town America. I mean, I'm Canadian, but there was so much in here that I was like, well, this just feels like towns in general. Like, I'm from a small town, and this is kind of the small town COVID experience. But he has made made the first COVID film, this was sometimes enjoyable, but mostly felt like it was kind of dragging or just trying to flash these very intense things in our eyes, often without weight to them, or often making me question, why did we go through that exercise, or what did that really have to serve with the plot? I don't know. This is one of those movies where, as much as I really don't want to, I think a second viewing would work out some moments where I can fully understand, like, what are these characters, or what is this moment serving in the overall narrative? What is this plot point actually trying to do, or is this just dangling trauma keys in front of a baby? I want to tell you guys about my theater experience last night, because this was one of the most unique theater experiences. Last week with Superman, there's clapping, there's hooting, there's hollering, there's people so excited. I didn't see a single phone taken out during Superman last week because people were just so locked in, excited, a room full of fans. Last night, there's probably 10 or 15 people, 10 to 15 people, I think, total. And it's like a pretty interesting mix where there's a couple of older people. Most of it is probably people around my age in their 20s, like mid-20s, 25 to 30. And I mean, there was a couple in front of me. They both kept checking their phones every probably 20 to 30 minutes. I don't know if they were bored or what was the deal. I think they were bored because at one point, probably midway through, the husband just let out the biggest sigh I have ever heard in a theater, where everyone heard it and started giggling. And it was at a particular point in the film where it did really feel like it was dragging. Midway limbo in the film, where I think the film was about to really dive into the satire element, and this guy just sighed so hard, and I was like, oh my god, that was so funny, and a bunch of people started giggling. There was also an elderly woman beside me. First of all, was sitting a row behind me all the way at the other side, but then as the film started, she moved down to my row and moved 2 seats over to me, which I was like, fuck, come on, man. She was making a lot of comments during the movie, like just mumbling to herself. I don't think anyone else heard it, but I could hear it. At first, I was annoyed, and then I kind of found it hilarious because at the start of the movie, Bo, oh my god, I can't believe I just did that. I haven't even seen Bo is Afraid. I meant Joe Cross, who was played by Joaquin Phoenix. He's sitting in a car by himself. These cops from the reserve come over to tell him, like, hey, put your mask on or whatever. And one of the cops doesn't even have his mask on properly. It's like hanging below his nose. And the lady beside me literally said, well, he's not even wearing it properly, and to herself. And I was like, oh boy, this might be a longer experience. As the movie went on and she kept making these little comments, I could tell, oh, she is really not liking this movie, because at one point when Austin Butler's character shows up, and I won't say what happens, that scene broke her, because she said, Jesus fucking Christ, like at probably 3 different times, or at one point she's like, what the hell is going on? Or she's like, this is fucking stupid, this is fucking ridiculous. And she was mumbling all of these things to herself. Probably smack dab halfway through the middle of the movie, she got up. I thought, oh, maybe she's going to the bathroom. Then I noticed she's grabbing all of her stuff. Like, she didn't leave anything. She left and didn't come back. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot remember. Actually, no, there was a movie recently where we had walkouts, and I can't remember what it was. That was a few weeks ago, where it was very divisive maybe, but I was like, oh boy, people walking out. And yeah, she got up and left. There was another couple that I heard when I was walking out that fucking hated this movie, but the questions they were asking were kind of dumb. Like, well, what was that group? I don't know. Sometimes it's very interesting to just sit and listen to people after the movie. I like to stay for the credits and hear what the immediate reaction was. That's one of my favorite things about going to the movies. That's why at-home streaming will never be as good for films, because you don't have that electricity in the air. And, you know, I was walking out, I went to the bathroom, and then I was walking out, and there was a group of 4 people that were my age, and they were all just chatting in the hallway, and I was listening, and it sounded like they were having a really like deep conversation about the movie, which is interesting. You know, this movie, if anything, it really does give you something to talk about, I would say, because it's trying to do something that hasn't really been done since COVID, of defining the COVID era experience and how crazy everything was, and how deep into our corners we sort of went politically. So I don't know, it's kind of a fascinating thing, and the theater experience was something I'll certainly remember, especially the lady in the poncho beside me going, Jesus fucking Christ, this is ridiculous. I thought that was very funny. But let's talk performances. I want to start with Joaquin Phoenix's Joe Cross. He plays our main sheriff honcho guy who starts to run for mayor. I think he's good in this this movie. I think he gets better as the film goes on. At the start, I wasn't really that interested in his character for probably the first 20 minutes. He's very mumbly. I don't know what it was up with. Maybe it was the theater or it was the sound mixing of the film, but I found some of the dialogue very hard to pick up on. And I was like, I feel like this is so quiet, but the music was way louder. And I was just like, what the hell are they saying? I honestly might need closed captions right now because I can't understand a damn word they're saying. Maybe I'm honestly losing my hearing. But as the movie went on, I was like, oh, this is like a kind of a crazy performance, or this is a crazy movie. And I liked his performance by the end of the film. I thought he's doing something interesting. Piece of shit guy who drops out of movies like the weeks before he's in them. But let's talk about Pedro Pascal as Ted Garcia. Not in the movie as much as I thought he would be, but I really liked what we did get from him. I really like the character of Ted Garcia. He's this mayor who has skeletons in his closet, and I like his dynamic with Joe Cross. All that stuff worked really well for me. Emma Stone, not really in the film a lot. I'll talk about her character and Austin Butler's character a little bit later. Austin Butler, his performance is interesting, I guess. I don't really know. But who I did like was Luke Grime and Michael Ward as the two officers that work for Joe. Michael Ward is playing an officer named Michael, and Luke Grime, I think his character's name is Guy. I really like their two characters because they're sort of, I don't know, coming to terms with everything that's happening in this COVID world, and it's really interesting to see how they play into that power dynamic under Joe. Same with Deidre O'Connell, plays Dawn, who's the mother-in-law of Joe Cross. She plays Emma Stone's mother. She's a crazy conspiracy theorist. It's really funny. She's just having a really good year. I loved her in The Penguin, obviously. She's really good in this. There's other really good performances as well, like Cameron Mann as Brian, Matt Gomez Hidaka as Eric Garcia. I really like these two best friends with an interesting dynamic. It's a really good cast with some very good performances that I was intrigued by. The directing. Let's talk about Ari Aster, because I think he's such an interesting filmmaker that won so many people on board with his first two films. Then he put out Beau is Afraid, which I have had the intention of watching since it came out because I was like, oh, I really liked Midsommar, or Midsummer, however you want to call it. I don't really care. I love that movie a lot. I've seen it a few times. He came very hot out of the gate, like I said, and then Beau is Afraid came out. Some people really hated that movie. Some people absolutely adored it. So now I feel like Ari Aster fans are like a very much a smaller section where he lost a lot of people with that film. And this movie feels like him sticking to being a filmmaker that wants to create divisive stuff, or is trying to really play around with the genres that he's in. And we're going to talk about the satire element here, but I mean, there's tons of stuff to talk about thematically with this film, but I just think like filmmaking wise, there are some genuinely cool filmmaking moments here with really interesting scene transitions and cool cuts, snap focuses, and framing. There were legitimately cool things that I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. Like two people laying in bed and he sort of tilts the camera with their heads. I'm like, that's a small thing. I like it. It's interesting. He's no doubt a very interesting director who can block and frame scenes really well in fun ways that are entertaining to watch. But the cinematography in Darius Khondji, I believe is how you say it. This is a really gorgeous film. Like, I actually thought this movie looks great. It has that really dry, pale Western feel to it. Like, this is being called a neo-Western satirical black comedy, and it's kind of like the first of its kind, I would say. The visuals really do play a lot into that, of kind of this dead town during COVID. Oh my God, remember March to like June of COVID, how quiet everything was, specifically March to May, I would say, where everyone was really staying home. There were, of course, super heavy restrictions of stop the spread for 2 weeks, and then it became 2 months, then it became a year, all this stuff. So it's really interesting to sit in that time and how it's shot, how it's directed, and how all of this space is used. But where this movie definitely did rub me a little bit was the runtime and pacing. This is a 2 hour, 25 minute, 2 hour, 28 minute, something around there, I would say. People saying in their reviews, your mileage will vary, was very evident within my own room, because one lady left halfway through, huge sigh, a couple checking their phones. I was interested because I wanted to see where this would go, but I can see a lot of people at home when this hits streaming. In Canada, it's A24, so it'll probably be on Crave. I could see a lot of people turning this on because, oh, Joaquin Phoenix, Emma Stone, Austin Butler, Pedro Pascal, like it's a very star-studded cast, let's check it out. And after 30 minutes being like, okay, nothing's happening, I'm gonna turn this off. I do think there's a lot happening. I had a weird thing in the first half here here where I felt like every time the movie was really starting to get interesting for me, it goes into another part of the story and I'm like, oh, you lost me. I was just starting to get invested. And then the second half, just like fully, I was interested of like, oh, this is batshit insane, as with Ari Aster's films most of the time. So it is also a runtime and pacing thing. I think there is something mentally here that might be at play where a lot of us don't want to sit with our feelings of 2020, specifically this time where it was just, oh man, it was absolutely carnage. We were sort of having a political and emotional reckoning as a world, not just in America, but across the world. Like everyone was really trying to come to terms with when we had to, lock ourselves up at home for a while. We had thinking time, and it made us rethink our structures as nations. It made us rethink our structures as people, and how do we treat each other? How do we reckon with how we got here and think about our history? I mean, when we can't be outside, we can only look within, and that's really what COVID forced us to do. Obviously, I would think cabin fever also plays. Just like, dude, I was manic for a while in COVID. Like, I was actually insane. So, there's a lot of that at play here, and I think the pacing definitely of this film, there's a factor where the pacing in combination of what we are watching is very hard to swallow. I knew this film was probably going to be annoying or uncomfortable going into it because we're like all reflecting on COVID and we haven't really done that yet. I could see some people that will really love this film because they are looking to process that time. I think there were elements of this where I was like, ugh, this is hard to watch, but at the same time, it's maybe good that we look back and like, what were we trying to achieve here? Let's just talk about like the story in general, I guess, because I think this is a story not only about America at this time and much of the world, but I think this is like how we shifted in 2020 to sort of stay in our own political corners, but about individuals and entities at this time that used that shifting time for their own good. And I think Joe Cross as a character is a guy who is using this time for his own interests in some ways. And I think spoilers, I can definitely get more into that because I do think it's really interesting to look at his character within the greater context of this film. But there's a lot of ideas that Ari Aster is trying to throw in at this time. And of course, it was a time where it felt like the world was kind of falling apart. And we were all just like, holy shit, our world is so... to quote Tim Robinson, this world is so fucked up. That's how this world felt. Like, it was a crazy time where we were all questioning, like, why do we worship the things we do? Why do we have statues of certain individuals when we can just teach history for what it is and how bad it was in the past and how it led to our current institutions? It doesn't mean we're not teaching history anymore. Look, I'm a history student. I did my master's in history, did my undergrad in history. Like, I understand, it's like, oh, well, if we're taking all these statues down and we're renaming roads, how are people going to learn about history? It's like, well, there's still history books and there's still books. We're not censoring anyone. The right, I don't know, considering Stephen Colbert, his show was canceled last night because he criticized Paramount and Trump like 3 days earlier in the lawsuit they had. I think it's a hard argument to make that the right is not censoring people. But anyways, there's a lot of ideas at play here. And I'm going to run you through all of the themes, all of the ideas that we're going through here. But everything is very much turned up to 11, as the Spinal Tap guys would say in this film, and there's maybe too many ideas. I feel like some parts of the story don't get enough attention, and this movie could have really been shrunk down quite a bit. So why is Joe Cross running for mayor? Because that is sort of what this story is about. We have this small town sheriff, he's had power, and he said, for greater half of my life, it's been an honor to serve this town as sheriff or in law enforcement, and he's a guy who has had power and respect and a really authoritative position, I guess you could say. I don't know, is that the right word? And it's interesting that his inciting incident, I don't think it's a spoiler of why he's running for mayor, is he's against the COVID precautions. He's definitely, of course, a right-leaning character, like his Facebook page, or his Facebook, algorithm. We see it multiple times in this film, and definitely the point of view that we are getting in this film is very much from the right side with our Joe Cross character. I think we are seeing things from his perspective. It's a satire from his perspective and what like right-leaning people are worried of or what they are scared of or what they thought might happen. So Joe Cross goes to a grocery store one day. There's all these mask mandates, of course, where people are like, I don't know, worried about like, what is this world going to become and all this stuff. And he sees an elderly not being allowed in because, I can't breathe in a mask and Joe has asthma or whatever. So him standing up for that the old guy posting a photo with him on Facebook being like, oh, one true guy left. I think that little bit of power is really what sets Joe on his way. And he is a guy that is like, oh, I have a real opportunity here to get control of my life or get, I don't know, just like I can immediately be a hero here. And that's kind of what he's missing in his own personal life, which we'll get into. It's a lot. And I think it's a really cool, inciting incident. Now let's talk about the genre and how, I mean, Ari Aster is a filmmaker, how he's playing with the satire genre in general, because this is a neo-Western satire is what they're calling it. And how is he operating within that satire? Is he using the satire genre to his full effect? Is he using it to make us look more ridiculous? Is he using it to make fun of us? A little bit, but I think it is fascinating how Ari Aster is operating within the genre when I think it's very hard to make satires nowadays because of how ridiculous the news is. Corporations, billionaires, a certain president in this world are all almost satirically evil, all satirically terrible people, all satirically doing things that would be straight out of a comic book, or, you know, that's why Lex Luthor honestly seems like a realistic character nowadays. And I think Ari Aster stepping into satire is a very difficult thing now. That's why I think Saturday Night Live sometimes has a difficult time, or maybe an easier time, because there's such ridiculous stuff in the news every week that they can make fun of that. So a lot of this is not far-fetched, I would say. But what he does in the second half of this film is really interesting. The dream sequence, not even the dream sequence, or like the scenario that he's playing out, and this is a really perspective-driven film, is so fascinating because he is using the George Floyd protests, Black Lives Matter protests, Antifa, masks, COVID protocols. How does Ari Aster use these things in his films? I've seen some people say that this is an irresponsible film or a dangerous film to make. I could understand that perspective, that some people feel he is kind of making light of these things. There were a couple of moments where I felt icky. You know, he's poking fun at protesters that were out for the George Floyd protests. And at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, I get what he's trying to do here, but we're making fun of people that were protesting a murder. Like, what are we doing here? I think he's more making fun of people that really saw this as an opportunity. And again, this is a film talking about individuals or entities that step in at politically divisive times for their own power or their own well-being. These are not altruistic people who are actually trying to do good. A lot of these people, it's about, you know, activism and how people sort of sometimes run away with activism. I don't know. Is this film simply provocation is one big question I had. Before I wrote my notes, I was really trying to sit with this movie and be like, what is he trying to do here? Is he actually trying to just simply paint a picture? Is he trying to fence it in a little bit of the Alex Garland way of being like, oh, I made a movie for all people on the political spectrum? I don't think so. And I don't think this movie is simply trying to provoke us or trying to provoke people in general of all political affiliations. I think he's simply trying to make us uncomfortable by confronting how emotionally charged and distressed we all were at this time. What it's actually trying to say, I don't know. I didn't really take away a big message here. I think he is simply doing a satire, but he's not sure what his message is. If the message is simply COVID made us crazy, COVID led us to how we are today, where we're all so politically divided, I would disagree. I think there were underlying factors even earlier than that, like the election of Donald Trump sort of politically divided us. And I mean, I'm Canadian, but at the same time, you guys don't realize how much American politics affect the Canadians, because literally right now we're in a trade war with the US. Like, I think as Canadians, it's important to pay attention to other countries' politics because we are so interlinked with each other. So I don't know. I just, a lot of times when I was watching this film, I thought Ari Aster was trying to get out a thesis of, and it's from a book I read called White Tears, Brown Scars, which is basically talking about how white feminism betrays women of color by Ruby Hamad. I read this for, I think it was history of gender, history of sexuality in my, I feel like history of gender in my grad courses, in my master's. And it was basically talking about how a lot of the time activism, that's the word I was looking for, activism, the focus can really shift to white people or white women or white activists in general who are outraged rather than the actual scars or the injustices that people of color are suffering. And I think that's what a lot of this film is trying to poke at, is saying that, you know, white people who say they're anti-racist or all of these things are constantly shifting the attention onto themselves with their activism. That's what I got a lot of this film, is white women some trying to seek a attention, or not just white women, what white people in general trying to say, oh, I'm anti-racist, or oh, I am, I feel so bad about all these injustices. And then the attention shifts onto them, and it's, will everybody look at this white guilt, or everyone look at how good of an activist this person is because of how terrible they feel. But at the end of the day, them feeling so terrible and crying about it is actually pulling attention away. It's a really interesting read. And like, obviously, as a straight cisgender white guy, it really made me think about activism, or in general about my own attitude within 2020 and how my activism played out. Like, was I trying to be performative, or did I genuinely care? It makes you sort of sit back with those feelings. And I think that's what I got from this film as well, as Ari Aster is genuinely, specifically with one character in this film that we're going to talk about in spoilers, I think there is genuinely an attempt here at the white tears, brown scars thesis that Ruby Hamad was making in her book. And I really like that. Here is everything from 2020 that he's trying to poke at. COVID, obviously, with like masking protocols, safe distancing, how mean people were to each other that broke the rules, myself included. There's a lot of like maybe my belligerent behavior in 2020 that I do regret. He's also trying to talk about, as I said, white liberals outraged about systematic injustices, rightfully so, outraged in a good way, I would say. Like, I am not at all trying to come down on people that were protesting or anything like that. That is, you're right, absolutely. Police brutality and how it was viewed in 2020, the murder of George Floyd, AI data centers, conspiracy theorists, Antifa, small town politics. I would say it's interesting, like what it has to say about small town politics as well. But there's just, I think he's trying to touch on a lot here, and maybe it's too much at times. But let's jump into 2 stars and a wish. Star number 1, I think there's definitely a director swinging for the fences here. And it's nice that at least, even if you absolutely fucking hated this movie, it's interesting that there is a director trying something here. Star number 2, it's a movie that sparks conversation. Like, I feel like I haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg here. My wish, edit. Honestly, there were some sequences in here that were painfully too long. I'm trying to think, is there anything I really missed here? I don't think so. I think the film could have generally been shrunk down quite a bit, the runtime and pacing. It's a film about the definitive small town COVID experience, I would say. It's trying something that I don't think a lot of filmmakers have tried to do so far since 2020, and really try to turn a mirror, look at ourselves. I don't know. I think I liked 50% of this movie. I think the mayoral race stuff really had me hooked, weirdly enough, and then there's a certain final act mystery thriller thing that is fun. But otherwise, I did find it a little bit hard to watch, simply because it's so weird to be back in that space. Like, this was like a exposure therapy type thing where it's like, okay, you want to go back and live in 2020 for 2 hours? Not really. And it's a strange movie, but you know what? I think it might be interesting in 10 years to go back and revisit this. Right now, I'm at a 2.5 out of 5 stars because I think there is a lot of stuff in here that I'm like, ugh, this is rough. 2.5 out of 5. Let's jump into spoilers. Okay, let's talk spoilers for Eddington. So I'll touch on it quickly, but Joe Cross is someone who was losing control in his life. Like, his wife is someone that has a lot of trauma because she was molested when she was younger, and that's why she's very distant from Joe. She's at home, she's trying to recover, and I guess she's, going through therapy and things like that in her life that she's had a very difficult upbringing. Her mother lives with them, and Joe is losing control of his marriage, and obviously the town is kind of starting to move into that very angry COVID life where people are very divided. So I think what I was trying to get at with, like, who is this Joe Cross character? He's someone that saw this political divisiveness, I guess you could say, or this power shift where it was like, oh, suddenly being sheriff is not a good thing. Being a police officer is not a good thing. People are very angry at each other. And I helped one guy and he posted a picture about me, and some people were like, oh my God, you're such a hero. And obviously, refusing to wear a mask. He doesn't care about COVID protocols. He's very much on the right side of the conservative side and stuff like that. This is a movie about a guy sinking deeper and deeper onto the right side. I don't know, maybe not actually in his own head, but as a showman, as a politician, having to use the right as a means for his political career or his political aspirations. And this film is literally a satire of, like, the right-wing perspective playing out. He gets into a gunfire showdown with Antifa. Like, this is very much a perspective-driven film. I think he is someone that is feeling powerless, and that's why he moves into this political sphere, because he's like, politics is a way to get attention and get power, and that's why he's so quick to adopt all these new right-wing conspiracy theories and saying Ted Garcia is a rapist and all this thing, and he raped his wife because they had a history together, which, I mean, let's talk about Joe and Ted. They have a history because Joe's wife was previously involved with Ted Garcia, or they went on a few dates, and she allegedly had an abortion, but I don't think she did. The whole story is that, oh, well, Ted got her pregnant and she had an abortion when she was young. She was only 16. I feel like Louise, Emma Stone's character, is actually the mom of Ted's son. And I don't know. That's just a weird vibe that I picked up in this film of like, oh, maybe she didn't have an abortion. And in fact, she is a young mom that now she doesn't want to have kids with Joaquin Phoenix because she has a child in the past with another marriage and she didn't have her abortion. I don't know. That's not really something that comes up in the story very much. It is interesting that Joe kills Ted Garcia and his son, and it's like, oh, you're killing the past of your wife. He's literally hunting down the past and everything that is against him in this film. He kills a homeless person because it's like a source of his problems in the town, and I think the homeless guy gave him COVID in this film, or that's who he got it from. But I do really like that Ted and Joe have this shared past and this shared history that causes tension between them. One thing I thought that was really funny about this film, and I thought Ari Aster did really well, was teasing out Joe and his coworkers getting COVID, or at least Joe and the other cop guy. I thought it was interesting that they get COVID in this film, and Joe is slowly like, he tastes water at one point and he just like smacks his lips, and you can see that he's not tasting anything. He starts getting the sniffles. He starts coughing a little bit more with his asthma, and you can see it over a couple days, like, oh, he's getting COVID, and then he gets it really bad. It's funny because in the final shootout in this film, he has COVID and he's coughing up a storm. One big element that I liked about this film as well is the fact that Joe was no doubt going to get caught by Officer Butterfly Jimenez, who works for the local indigenous, and the fact that the town shares obviously indigenous land. They border like the actual territory of the reservation, I guess you could say. So I liked that it was very clear that Joe was going to get caught. That's not like a question in this film of like, ooh, would they ever have figured it out? It was like, oh, he was 10 minutes away from getting caught, but then there's this giant shootout that prevents him from getting caught, and Officer Jimenez doesn't catch him. But I like what they do at the end of this film with Michael. You know, he's a black officer that is working for Joe Cross, and he's very aspirational, and he's one character that in this film, there's multitudes of power and people that want power in this film or are aspirational, and Michael was one character in this film that genuinely I thought had good intentions and was caught a little bit on both sides, because he has a bit of a history with this girl that's an activist, or one of like the white liberals in this film that is being made fun of, and they have a history, they know each other, and she literally says to him like, you're a black police officer, does none of this bother you? And you can see, I at least I picked up on, you can see that some of this stuff is bothering him. And it was interesting as well how Joe is checking up on him like, oh, Michael, you okay? Like, I know you saw all this and yesterday must have been a rough day. So I do appreciate that at least Ari Aster is trying to acknowledge something that is so plainly on screen of like, you have this aspirational black police officer in a small town with a lot of right-leaning people that are blaming Black Lives Matters, and you know, the actual victim here is him in this story. Again, white tears, brown scars. There's a lot of outraged white people in this film, and yet at the end of the film, he is almost blamed for the murders, and he was the one that was thrown in jail. It's interesting how quickly his fellow officer sort of just gives into this conspiracy theory from Joe of like, yeah, he did it. Oh my God, you're right. Because they had this shared history, and how quickly Joe immediately puts all the evidence in the right places, like Ted's pocket watch or whatever that he got from the governor. And again, I think it is trying to hint at that thesis of white tears, brown scars. There is literally a disfigured or a scarred man at the end of this film, Officer Michael, who has scars all across his face. He knows he's the one that killed Ted because of their shared history. He's looking at him at the end of the film. I thought that was a very chilling image that works really well. So again, I do think Ari Aster is trying to hint at this overall thesis of the white tears, brown scars. Now, yes, at the end of the film, Joe is of course in a wheelchair because of his showdown with Antifa, who I have a question about in a moment that I'll get to, but at the same time, it's literally white tears because Joe is crying about his wife, who has gone and gotten pregnant went with Vernon, the cult guy that Austin Butler plays. But I really liked what Ari Aster was doing with the Michael character as an officer. He talks about how, I think he says like, I'm older than my dad was, or I'm younger than my dad was when he got promoted to sergeant, because Joe promotes him at one point when he says, I'm going to run for mayor. Do you want to step up? Is that something you would like? And there's a really interesting moment there of two guys that are maybe attracted to power for different reasons, because Joe Cross to me was a guy that got praise from one person in a grocery store, and all of a sudden he thought like, oh, standing up to COVID and all this stuff can get me more recognition and people wanting pictures with me. And it's interesting because I don't think he's actually aspirational for the right reasons. Whereas Michael, you know, he talks about his father, how he was a police officer as well. Joe worked with his dad. I think there's those two spectrums, or two sides of the spectrums, or the other side of the teeter-totter, whatever analogy, that Michael is actually aspirational because of his father, and he's very ambitious because of his father, that he wants to be maybe someday a black sheriff in this small town. And he has really cool aspirations, and I actually liked Michael as a character a lot. He actually just sees this as a job. He's someone that is changing the system from within maybe, and him and his father were as well, by being people of color in this system that can expose these strange things and slowly try to make these changes. I don't know. I think there's something there that Ari Aster is actually trying to do. Antifa. Let's quickly talk about Antifa in this film, that they are used. So there's Antifa, obviously protests like anti-fascism protests across the country, and Antifa is this big buzzword and like this looming group that people are scared of in this world. And it's like, well, who are Antifa? And in this film, they are like a physical embodiment. There's this group that are flown in on a private jet, and I think they are obviously people that are bought out, or people that are paid for and funded by the corporation that is setting up this AI data center, and it's going to threaten the water levels, which is a very real life thing that is happening. That is why AI is so bad. There are whole towns in the US that are just like running out of water pressure, and their electricity is all fucked up because of these AI data centers. And that's another thing that Ari Aster is really trying to get at. They fly in on a private jet. I'm pretty sure the logo of that data center is on the back of the jet. I will say that the whole Emma Stone and Austin Butler stuff felt a little bit undercooked or underwritten to me. Like, I feel like there's weird commentary on a traumatized woman, and it's poking weird fun at a woman that is turning to conspiracy theories because she was molested as a child by, I think, her father. And it's just a weird use of her character. Let's talk about what this film ends up with and what the final messages are trying to really be. So Cameron Mann plays Brian, who's this young white guy who has a crush on a girl who is a local activist, and that's why he starts like a Black Lives Matter page in the small town, because he wants to get her attention. He likes her story on Instagram, or her tweet about, you know, all the protests, and at the same time Ted Garcia's son is madly in love with her, and there's this competition going on between the two of them of like, oh, who can out activist the other to get the girl at the end of the day. So that's why this movie is talking about the effects of activism, how sometimes it can be just for like personal fulfillment and personal goals or aspirations or whatever. At the end of the film, he is roaming the town, and I didn't really know where they were going with his character. I thought if they didn't do this ending with him, it would have been a cool enough thing with his character of like, oh, how, you know, white young men could maybe be pulled into this for the sake of getting attention from women. There's the Antifa, quote unquote Antifa, or whatever you want to call them, group that's in a shootout with Joe Cross. Joe Cross gets stabbed in the head by an Antifa member and shot multiple times, where Brian hops out from behind a truck, films himself shooting the Antifa members, and he blows up on TikTok. He's like this right-wing internet sensation. There's a picture of him with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I was like, oh, they're doing Kyle Rittenhouse. Really interesting. I thought that was one of the most powerful sections of the film, where I was like, oh shit, that's actually a really interesting commentary, how people in the middle of this, again, were trying to use power and how that power can turn into fame and all this stuff. I just thought it was really fascinating. At the end of the day, corporations come out on top because Joe Cross is now mayor. He's disabled, he's non-vocal, and his stepmother, or his mother-in-law, pardon me, is basically running things for him, and the AI Data Center Corporation wins their contract. They come into town, and at the end of the day, the corporation came out on top. It's a lot to process. I think that's all I have for spoilers. Let's jump into what else I watched. Alrighty, what else I watched? Well, I watched 5 movies actually. I watched 4 TV shows and then read one book, or one half of a book. Let's start with the book, All-Star Superman. I read the first 6 episodes. It's not issues, it's episodes in this book. It's very different from Grant Morrison. So I read episodes 1 to 6. There will be a video this Sunday about that, but I really, really loved it. I love how sort of goofy, how wholesome, how happy everything is, and like colorful, I guess you could say. You can definitely definitely see where James Gunn drew inspiration from the character. I have been waiting to read this book for 3 years now, ever since that first announcement that, oh, the new live action Superman is based on All-Star Superman. I loved it. I would totally recommend, if you liked the Superman movie that just came out last week and you are looking to get into comic books, like maybe even Superman comic books because you're interested, start with All-Star Superman. It is such an easy read. It's so much fun. It's a way different Superman than the film career-wise because he's at the end of his career, kinda, and it was a blast. I'm looking forward to reading the next 6 episodes, the final 6 episodes. Let's jump into TV, though. I watched Survivor Season 9, Episode 3 to 13, so I was in binge mode. Pretty interesting season. I know who wins it, but probably the funniest part of Season 9 is that Jeff actually, after the season, dated one of the contestants, Julia? I think it's Julie. He dated her for several years, and he was like 43. She was 23 when she was on the show, and it was like a big deal when it happened. You know, at one point, she writes a little heart on her chest with Jeff in the middle, and it's like, oh boy, this is kind of funny considering what happens in the future. But I do really like the cast, or at times I like how unlikable the cast is, that there are some ladies on there, some older ladies that are just so crabby and rude, and it's kind of funny how they clash with some of the younger contestants. So it's a very like classic older Survivor season. I know a lot of people don't really remember Season 9 that much, like it's not as spoken about as especially the season after All Stars, which I absolutely loved All Stars. So it's just such a good season. It's my favorite season of the first 9 easily. But then after Survivor, I watched Murderbot. I finished Season 1. I think it's Season 1 we could call it, or is it a limited series? I feel like it's a limited series, but I watched episode 9 and 10. Honestly, it's like a B+ show. I think it's pretty fun, but I'm not dying to recommend it to people. If you're gonna watch an Apple show, watch The Studio. I think it's cool seeing Alexander Skarsgård do fun stuff that he wants to do, especially because so much of his acting is just like insane batshit drama stuff. But at the same time, him within this world is just funny, him getting to be a goofy little soap opera loving robot. And then finally for TV shows, I watched It's Always Sunny, Season 17, Episode 3. Mac and Dennis become EMTs. Dear God, this might be the best Sunny season we've had in like 6 years because the stuff they're getting up to feels so classic. Like this was very much the gang solves the gas crisis or whatever. So there's so many layers to this episode where there's an EMT picking up a guy that had a heart attack from Frank's Hot Peppers in the bar. And Dennis and Mac are so immediately drawn to the EMT lifestyle. Like, whoa, that was pretty hardcore. There was a lot of adrenaline in this room. So they do a CPR course and then they buy this older ambulance for cheap and they start faking being EMTs. One of the most batshit insane episodes we've had in a while. Episode 2 and 3, just fantastic, top-notch Sunny stuff. But let's wrap up by talking movies. So I watched 5 movies. One of them is a movie that I watched for one of the vacation episodes that we will have soon. That was Drive from 2011, Ryan Gosling film. So I won't talk about that. But let's start with Superman. I saw it again in theaters. I actually saw it in a small town old theater that is like, you know, no leather seats. It's the classic seats, which I absolutely love way better. It was really cool to sit and enjoy that experience in an old theater. The popcorn was as buttery as motherfucking can be possible. Like it was leaking butter when we got to the bottom half of it. So good though. Now I'm craving buttery popcorn. But look, Superman, I enjoyed it even more a second time. And I hate how much of a fanboy I am because there are quite a few flaws with the film, but it's so damn good. It's so damn enjoyable. Definitely the second time I watched, one thing that kind of bothered me a little bit more was the whole immigrant storyline. I feel like there are things that James Gunn could have cleared up a little bit more of how Superman is feeling at the end of the film about his Kryptonian heritage, because this is a movie where he's all about his heritage and there's this immigrant storyline. It's meant to be a movie about, adoption or heritage and embracing and loving your family. But at the end of the film, he just like sort of abandons his Kryptonian heritage and doesn't, or I don't think he abandons it, but he sort of just is obviously way more human. But I think the point of the movie, and that's why I'm not that bothered about it, is that he wants to be human and he is human. And it's not about what your parents set you out to do when you're a child. I honestly am going to change my Superman movie rankings, and I might even change my rating to a 4.5 because it was so fucking good. Superman, 4 stars. Then I watched Bend It Like Beckham with my girlfriend at the cottage last weekend. I have not seen this movie in probably 15 years, but my brother and I used to watch it every month as kids. This is like a classic movie that would be on loop in my house. I don't know why. Well, I mean, we grew up and we still are massive soccer fans. We both played soccer. We're Manchester United fans. David Beckham is probably my favorite player of all time. So Bend It Like Beckham, of course, I'm going to be attracted to it. And I gotta say, the movie is actually trying to tackle a lot, which I appreciated. Like there's body positivity, women's sports in general, and how at the time, women's sports were very much not what they are now. They were a joke to people, and it was very like, oh, women shouldn't be out doing these rough things. But also, it's talking about like Punjab culture and how Jess is trying to embrace both cultures and be honorable to both cultures of like, oh, I want to be a proud woman who is going out and trying to push into these new things, but also she has scars on her legs, so there's body positivity. It's just, there's so many messages in the film that I genuinely think it's pulling off really well. The only thing I don't like is the romance with her coach. 4 stars. It's a banger. It's a really honorable film. I still think it holds up. Then I watched a movie called Sovereign. It's a new release with Nick Offerman, Jacob Tremblay, Dennis Quaid. I posted a review on my socials about it. I hadn't heard about this film until a few weeks ago. When I saw a couple of reviews come out, I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I wrote a super long Letterboxd review about it because I just had so many thoughts. There's a really interesting premise where there's this dad who's a sovereign citizen. He goes on the road giving like chats and seminars about the movement. His son, who's a teenager now, is starting to question the movement because they're going to foreclose on his house. And he's kind of like, my dad's not doing anything about this. And really, this movement is not helping us at all. So at the same time, his dad is like, oh, well, you should come on the road with me now that you're a teenager. So there's this simultaneous, like, the kid's pulling away, but at the same time, his dad is pulling him further in. And I really like that. And I just find all the kooky sovereign citizen stuff so entertaining to watch. It's like a car crash. You can't look away. But then at the same time, the movie is just like, there's also Dennis Quaid, who's this grizzled cop, and his son just joined the force and he's a new father. And Dennis Quaid is coming to terms with how he parented as a father. And it's like a movie that's trying to put a hat on a hat almost. Like, we could have had this interesting father-son dynamic, but then the movie's like, oh, let's also do a comparison of a father-son dynamic within the system and someone that's very respectful and loves the system, the political system, and being a cop and all this stuff. And then this father-son dynamic outside of the system and this pair that hates the system. And I don't know, it's trying to do a lot. I don't think it all quite came together. 3 stars out of 5. I think it's worth a watch, and I'm very excited for what the director does next. I called it Ron Swanson Presents Sovereign Citizen Kane because his name's Jerry Kane in the movie. Final movie I watched this week was I Know What You Did Last Summer from 1997. I've never seen it before. I know it's like this kind of cult classic, or it's like a pop culture classic, and it was so funny that the girl from the new one said, oh, well, this movie inspired Scream, even though Scream came out the year before. It was really funny. I gotta be honest, it was kind of a letdown. I thought it was gonna be a better movie for some reason, but I think it was just me not realizing that, like, oh no, it's a cultural thing because it was so big at the time and there's so many stars in it that people love. And yeah, it kind of sucked, to be honest. I just thought it wasn't that great. The writing was really weird. All of the information in the film that we get that could cause a lot of mystery and drama, we get in like the last 20 minutes of the movie. So it's like all the dramatic tension is just revealed at the end of the film. Strange structuring, weird movie, 2 stars out of 5. I really wasn't crazy about it. That's been what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 79, Eddington. What a time it was. Crazy theater experience. Let me know what you thought of Eddington. As always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts, like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. Share us with a friend. Leave a review or a comment right underneath on Spotify or your streaming platforms. If you're on the YouTube channel, please hit like, subscribe, comment down below. How would you rank the Ari Aster films that you've seen? If you want to get in touch with the show, you can also email us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are just @watcherofallthings. TikTok is @watcher.of.all.things. There's new stuff on social media every day. I'm very active on there, so go check all those profiles out, as well as my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show, and I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, Fantastic Four: First Steps. Very excited for this movie. It's our final review before I go on vacation. I have 4 episodes preloaded. Don't you guys worry. I'm editing the 4th one this weekend. They're all going to be up and ready for you every Monday dropping. It's going to be a fun little mini series. But as for now, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for all the love, comments, all the lovely stuff that I get from you guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.